Alright, so in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing to you all the Residence: A Plague Tale Legacy Platinum Trophy experience. Also, huge thank you for the early access and for Residence: A Plague Tale Legacy and Focus Entertainment for sponsoring this video. If you can't already tell, Residence: A Plague Tale Legacy is a part of the Plague Tale game series. It's the third installment following Innocence and Requiem, both absolute banger games, by the way. And the game is out right now. You can buy it with the link in the description, which is super neat. But in terms of trophies, this game contains 37, including the Platinum Trophy. I would rate its Platinum difficulty probably around a 3 or a 4, considering there isn't any difficulty trophies, and there was nothing missable throughout it because you can chapter select literally everything in this game. We love to see modern chapter selection in story games, we truly do. Without further ado, let us begin. So, stage 1 of the Platinum grind for this game is going to be us going in and getting the story completed while enjoying the early life of the Plague Tale series character, Sophia. This game takes place and goes through her life as a child up till adulthood and 15 years before Plague Tale Requiem. And the first chapter is entirely surrounding her upbringing as a child. We first see her in captivity of sorts by a bunch of these deranged nuns who were just jacking poor little Sophia full of poison, I guess, to say the least. I mean, just look at those veins. You shouldn't be having those unless you're knee deep on a trend cycle, not a little girl, that's for sure. But with these poisons being pumped through Sophia's body, it sort of allowed or unlocked her to draw out visions and moments from the past, which we will explore much later in the game. Along with that, this game sort of runs linear with these people in the past, and we will touch some more along that later on when we get to it. But it's very cool how they do weave in pretty much 2 stories into one. Anyways, long story short, Sophia's father finally finds her, and he barges in, taking out these damn nuns and saving her from the nut house. You then go back to her home, and it's sort of inside of a camp that we live in, which is for the most part run by her father. There is a lot of character building and hints at future story moments which all tie in later on. But for the most part, you kind of just run around and you have fun. These are the good old days, and boy, we're gonna miss them soon. And by soon, I mean now, because after running around, we end up hearing that the expedition from an island nearby has returned, and father is not here. Yeah, he died on that island, that cursed island. So this man named Pharaoh ends up taking control of the camp, and let's just say he's not the best dude out there. I mean, instead of consoling us as a child who just lost her father, he begins making us draw out our dreams and visions, because they hold some secrets to the island, or at least sometimes they hold secrets to the island. This special cursed island, by the way, is the main story objective throughout the entire game. It holds some insane things and very, very valuable items and history that the camp is trying to get because, I mean, riches and power, who doesn't want that? But the last scene we play as child Sophia is in the training room, and it transitions very smoothly into us as a big old girl grown up. You then train a little bit more before the story begins to really pick it up, and it has us out in the world on our first mission of sorts. We are in search of a key at this place for the sacred island of the game, and nearly immediately we would end up getting jumped by enemies, quite literally. Our homie who was with us also got taken out right away, so I'm questioning why we got assigned with him. Truly, no help. Then you battle it out, and this game's combat is honestly amazing. It has a very solid flow, and it's super satisfying to take out enemies. You can literally hear their soul leaving them. It's great fun. And there is a very big handful of trophies, probably the majority of them in the game, that are related to just combat actions throughout the game. I got a lot of them naturally, but some of them do take some farming with the checkpoints. But to end off the combat, we actually get our first of many past life flashbacks. It's unclear as of right now what all of this is, but it's gonna make sense later, trust me. Anyways, then the expedition leader Irene just shows up and cleans house. Shout out to girl power. There is then one last scene in the first chapter. We see a mercenary fighting people like crazy in the fighting pit. At first it seems like it was all just for funsies, but then he just murked the damn ringleader, and it was now our job to to kill them all. After all was said and done, a meeting got called by Pharaoh, and the chapter pretty much just ends off with the first trophy of the game from the story. You do as well get a sword trophy on every single chapter in this game, which is very nice. So chapter 2 then begins. By the way, there is 14 total chapters in the game, with the last one being kind of an epilogue in a sense. But anyways, chapter 2 is when we begin playing as Sophia out in the real big world this time. The camp is trying to infiltrate a town nearby, and the town is absolutely massive, and it's full to the brim of soldiers from the army, who will unsurprisingly be a pain in our side the entire game. Now, the base plot for this mission has us just sneaking through the town to get to a church and signal the attack from the camp, because the army allegedly has a way to get into the island that of which we need to unlock its secrets. And for the most part, you do actually sneak your way through. However, a lot of combat is actually trickled in here and there, which again is very fun. But once we do signal the attack, all chaos just breaks loose. You end up having to fight a ton to get out because the army is in full force. We end up losing basically all our friends in the attack, including this big boy who is like our uncle of sorts. And then it's all up to us to get the chest from the army as it's being loaded onto a boat nearby to get out of town. On the way there, I also got my first combat trophy of the game called Returning the Favor, which is from killing an archer enemy with a throwing knife. This is actually super easy to do, and you'll probably do it on accident like I did right here, because throwing knives are absolutely everywhere and one of the best tools in combat. So here's that trophy pop, which I did nail the hit. Then inside the chest, you end up finding this relic of sorts, which is very important shortly later on. But then we do get into one more fight, you end up running away, and then we sail away with our friend named Lenny. You then sail back to the camp to find it in ruin and being burned to the ground. And we jump down shore to try and find anyone alive, and more importantly, a book that we need for the island, because it holds a bunch of clues as to what's going on there. And we end up just finding it in the cutscene, which is pretty cool. Our goal then swaps to just escaping because the entire place is obviously burning to the ground. There was a ton of fighting on the way out, but most notably we end up battling Pharaoh in our first boss fight of the game. And throughout the fight, he also rants on and on about how he sold the camp out to the army or the villain, etc., which we didn't do at all. And apparently someone else did, who we're gonna find out later on, and it's honestly pretty shocking. But I end up winning the fight, and then Pharaoh got sort of crushed by the ceiling falling in. He's fine, but he's got some bruises. He's fine. Anyways, you then do one final run off the camp, and you jump on our friend's boat to sail away and end up the chapter with our Star Trophy pop. The next chapter then opens up and we talk about the game plan. Seeing as we are now outcast and being hunted by both Pharaoh and the army, there's only one sensible choice. Go to the island, where they're all also probably gonna go. Now, while talking, we also go through this book of drawings Sophia made when she was having those dreams and stuff, and there is a combo on one page which shows us how to open this relic that we stole from the army. Once doing so, an orb falls out and it gives Sophia some sort of vision flash. She is then kind of enlightened in a sense, and she says the island calls to us, which is why we then go there. Upon arriving to the island, it honestly looks gorgeous. I can't imagine how our father would have got brutally killed here, and hundreds of thousands of others. But this entire chapter basically just has us searching the island and trying to make it in further. There is a ton of puzzles with the book, which holds clues as to what you need to do. It's a very cool system, and it doesn't really hold your hand, so my brain did have to actually work out what to do, which was great. Turns out I am not brain dead. It's been solved, and I did figure out how to do all the puzzles here through some critical thinking. We also got the first major vision of the past, and all of these go back to when this island was thriving, and in relation to a key person named Theseus, who was like the past world's hero of sorts. But long story short, again, we just kept on crawling deeper and deeper into the island, which is absolutely massive, by the way. And after reaching a door that seemingly went to heaven, it ended off with an Detroit pop. And funnily enough, the next chapter's name was From Hell It Rose, so yeah, maybe we aren't in heaven. Granted, it is beautiful here. This is basically just society if everybody dropped a like on this video right now. Anyways, our first goal is to just make it over to the temple in the distance because this place is quite in ruin, which in turn makes it very hard to go anywhere. Spoiler, you can just go to the side and go around. On the way around the bend, we also spot the entire goddamn army landing on the beach. This is about to make our time in this island much, much harder. And you end up fighting some of those boys right away once making it to the temple entrance. This combat section was also very fun. I enjoyed kicking the enemies off the ledge into the abyss greatly, and I would recommend to a friend. Afterwards, we then strong-armed our way through the temple door and began to explore. You end up reaching another locked door almost right away, and we also learned that this orb we have, which is like the key to some doors that have, you know, an orb slot, it can also shine, outline, and marks ways to get into certain areas. So I used it to solve this little puzzle of the door, and voila, we were in. We then see just how insanely large this place is, and yes, we have to go to the bottom. Good lord above, or below, I guess. Anyways, you then go between puzzle to combat, the puzzle into combat. That's sort of how this game flows when progressing to the temple, which makes sense because the enemies, they're not doing the puzzles, they're just kind of waiting for us to do them, or they're just blowing stuff up to get past it. However, after that cycle goes on for a bit, we end up walking into the darkness and seeing a little bit of a hole off in the distance. However, Sophia got a bit too drawn in and nearly walked off the edge of the room before getting pulled back. I think somebody might need a little nap, I'm not gonna lie. Girl is tripping. Literally. After that, however, we reach the first of many death puzzles, and by that I mean if you fail it, you die a horrible, painful death. I definitely did them all first try, so I'm a genius. You then go to one last death puzzle, and you have to battle a multitude of enemies during it, which is very fun. Afterwards, we finally reach an elevator to take us deep into this place, and on the way down, another vision begins, and we played as Theseus for a large majority of it. This entire, like, past trance thing all relates again to the story, but in this past story, it revolves entirely around us doing these, like, trials as Theseus to prove our worth and take the crown of this old age. So naturally, there is a butt-ton load of fighting, and it's so badass, I can't even describe it. Now, after the action, we then come to reality and see a very dark entrance into this next room, but not in terms of light, but rather just the environment. On the walls, there is just dead people clawing away from what seems to be a monster that was chasing them. Wink, wink. Anyways, this next room held another big old puzzle. Thankfully, I did put on my thinking cap this morning, and I figured it out after a few moments with the help of the good old book, as you would expect. And naturally, right after doing it, we got jumped by enemies once more. They were no challenge for our sword, however, and they are all dead now. We then reached this room full of water, and a cool boat took us on a little ride to the other side of the room. Once reaching the door, we then just go through a few more with our neat little key, and the chapter ends off once more with another trophy pop. We then open up the next chapter outside this time. I have no clue how we ended up outside when we just went deeper and deeper in the temple, but then again, I'm not a medieval architect, so I have no clue how this building was made. But you end up reaching another locked door and unlock another new puzzle thing with the orb. This one is a pretty simple one this time, just having us match the colors to the light. Colorblind people are shaken right now. But then you open that door to a far more pretty scenery of the landscape once again, and this chapter leads into a very, very long puzzle section spanning numerous areas. Once you make it inside this center room, 4 pillars rise up, and we then have to go through 4 differing trials to grab the sigil we need to match them all. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these because they are largely all just puzzles, and I want you guys to think hard like I did. I actually think I'm smarter after finishing this game because, damn, there was 0 guides out when I did this because, you know, obviously, I got early access. Anyways, once you make it to the final trial, you end up not being able to do it because it's all destroyed. However, in the cutscene, Pharaoh in the camp actually made it here finally. So it turns out that everyone decided to show up to the good old island this time. Now remember, Pharaoh still thinks we are evil and we betrayed him, so we're kind of screwed right now. But before anything happens, we just have another past transition and you play as Theseus once again. And as per usual, you just slay everyone, then complete this puzzle, and that serves as the hint for us in reality. We then open the door finally. However, after that, Pharaoh refuses to let our friend go, and we end up just getting thrown into the hole below, deep down into darkness. But the chapter does end off here, and here's that trophy pop. So this next chapter then begins, and since we fell through that very scary hole, you must be wondering, where does this lead? Well, all those hole type things that we have been seeing are actually gateways for this island's monster to travel through. And seeing as we fell through it, we are now in the monster's lair or realm, I guess. The monster of this island will get explained by the end of the game, but for the most part, it's just like this wormy creature who seeks out life and then turns them to stone in a sense. I don't know how to really describe it, but it's horrifying and it's very hard to avoid since it literally sucks in life from like hundreds of yards away. So for the most part in this chapter, we just run for our life, and you also learn a lot about how the monster does work. Summed up pretty quickly, light is the only thing that deters it, so yeah, that's pretty easy to remember. But all in all, this chapter's had us running. It was very scary, pretty challenging, and once finally crawling to the surface, even I felt exhausted, and I just sat in my overpriced gaming chair the entire time. But then the chapter does end, and here's that trophy pop. The goal of the next chapter was then to reach the Black Temple, which is where the story is taking us next. As usual, you got your typical puzzles, but this one featured a lot more combat this time opposed to door puzzles, which is very fun. And then moving on, you just fight a ton until reaching this faded door, which upon entering triggers a very long and very important scene of the past. However, after winning, we then got thrown into a tiny maze of sorts while the monster chased after us. And this all is to prove that we are fit for the throne once more, and to become the current king's heir because he does not have a suitable one. And this was honestly very hard. I failed numerous times. Again, the monster is not easy to avoid. But long story short, I did finally succeed, and then the king leaves us with saying that the next trial is the labyrinth. It then falls back to Sophia in reality. We then have to parkour through the area we just saw in the past, except traditionally it's all in ruin now. However, once making it through, we then did one more puzzle, and you end up just awkwardly walking in on Pharaoh in the camp. Bad timing to say the least. However, this time Pharaoh realizes that he can't get rid of us, so he just sort of begins to trust us a little bit, and he lets us go forward ahead of them to prove that we aren't a traitor. Yes, the hatred from him is still there because he thinks that we are a traitor, even though he has no real evidence of it. Men, am I right? Wait, I'm a man. Anyways, after going on the elevator, it segues back to Theseus in the labyrinth, and man, the visuals here are crazy. The scale of this place is insane, and it's just so badass overall. Sadly though, we get cut short and go back to Sophia, so no insane labyrinth gameplay quite yet. However, as Sophia in this cutscene, something happens in the labyrinth, and a giant wave of light and loud singing King of Swords rains out, which causes us to collapse. Everyone just scram the chapter to end with another trophy pop. The next chapter is then a dream chapter while Sophia is knocked out from whatever just happened. We first play as her as a little girl with those evil nuns, but after some exploring, it transitions to us meeting Theseus in our dream, and it turns out she is a girl, and also the one who has been guiding us through the island. The chapter then ends and another trophy does pop like usual. You then awake abruptly and you see the monster flying towards us, and unfortunately our homegirl does get caught, and yeah, rest in peace. So then we just run away, and for the next multitude of areas, that's essentially all we do. And again, it is horrifying. Like, this is legitimately a horror game. I got more afraid from being chased by this creature than most modern horror games I've played recently. Also, the dying animation is insane. You straight up just see the life leave our eyes slowly. It's crazy work. Eventually, we do make it topside, but it's nighttime now, so the monster does follow us. And you end up having to both dodge the monster, but also fight enemy soldiers at the same time. Talk about the worst multitask ever created, and it went great. After making it up and up and up this path, however, we reached another boss fight with Pharaoh at a very cinematic conclusion. We won once again and had him at blade point. However, we stopped because Pharaoh is at the end of the day our sort of father figure after our dad died in the beginning of the game, so we couldn't kill him, and he also does finally drop the shit, and he accepts that we aren't bad and didn't betray him. So he then joins us for the rest of the game as our new partner in a sense. And the chapter then ends off with our trophy pop. The next chapter then had us topside once more, traveling towards the next entrance into the new area that we are in. And we also spot who the traitor has been this entire time. It was Irene, that lady who saved us way back when. And I honestly didn't expect this at all. I was trying to think who it would have been, and I honestly thought it was our friend that died earlier, but you know what? That's crazy. Anyways, you then fight a ton, and I actually got 2 combat trophies back to back in this ginormous fight. First was from throwing an enemy into another called Skilled Maneuver, and after that was one from throwing a knife at an enemy right in the head and breaking their stance, which was so clean I almost fell out of my chair. Anyways, we end up getting overwhelmed by the enemies because they do have an army after all, so we just ziplined away and down to the side. There was then a very big puzzle section with us in this jungle area trying to open this door that Pharaoh could never get through, and you basically just have to run around this jungle and find all of these different sigil signs and all of that. Really, it's nothing new, just more spread out this time. But once we did make it inside, you then go through another flashback to Theseus, and we basically just unlock this new ability with the orb to send out light and fend off the monster that way. Not much else really does happen though, and then we swap back to Sophia once more, just trying to make it through that same room, but it's, you know, in ruin once again. After doing so, we then reached heaven once more, and the chapter ends off with our trophy pop. You then begin the final goal of the game, to open up numerous of these mirror or like lens things and flow this heavenly bright light down into the monster's area to destroy or cleanse it for good. So this entire chapter basically just had us do that. You fight a lot, do a lot of light puzzles, and a ton of parkour, which is honestly pretty challenging sometimes. I felt like I was on the damn Ninja Warrior TV show at one point, but I also got a trophy here after dying because I died so many times the game felt bad for me. Thanks, I guess. But after making it near the end of the light puzzles, we boss fight Irene this time, and we pretty much just kill her. She's for the streets, on God. Pharaoh unfortunately does take a pretty severe blow. He isn't dead quite yet, but he can't go on. And the chapter then ends off with a trophy pop. So for the next few chapters, the gameplay is basically entirely surrounding the monster. We are deep inside of its area now, and you basically just fight it or run from it while trying to make it to where we need to go to destroy it. On the way there, I also did get another trophy, and it was from getting nearly caught but jumping away at the very last second. A very cool mechanic, and yeah, here's the trophy pop. I also got another one right after from fending it off with the light laser for the orbs, so yeah, again, cool trophy pop, and here it is. Now we then do run from the monster one more time, very largely. However, the chapter then ends off with us back as Theseus, and we finally revealed our identity to the king, who turns out to be our father, and he has disowned us or banished us basically from the family and the throne because of us being a female. Shameless, bro, shameless. So we then fight him for the crown, and this is by far the hardest fight in the game. I tried my best, but I died numerous times. However, once finally winning, we don't kill him, but rather the monster gets his ass. And the chapter then ends off with our trophy pop. We then entered the final real chapter of the game, and we made it to the infamous labyrinth. The goal is to make it to the center, obviously, because that's how labyrinths work, and that is also where the monster truly is residing in, and where we will find out what all of this is from. On the way there, there's a ton of fighting, puzzles, parkour. It's got it all, and it's insanely cool. The environment is just amazing to play, and it's truly a spectacle. I also did get another combat trophy from activating a light as enemies were coming for me, and I lived, so here's a trophy pop. And then I ended up getting another combat trophy after when I was in this big fight, and I actually ended up trading with this enemy here, but the trophy itself was just from getting 25 critical kills, which is cool, and here's a trophy pop. I then reached the final area, and you use the all-powerful light to eradicate the monster as it desperately tries to reach out and get to us to save itself. All in all, all, we succeeded and we took out the monster. You then discover what the monster truly was, and it's actually Theseus's little brother who has just been possessed, I guess, and turned into the monster. Truly devastating, and I low-key feel bad now. Rest in peace, little bro. You ain't deserve all of this. Anyways, the chapter then ends off with the poison also leaving Sophia's veins, finally, because it nearly consumed her. And then we got the final chapter trophy pop. So the epilogue then begins, and I guess this is chapter 14, but you pretty much just walk back to shore after the corruption leaves slowly. We find Pharaoh again, and he sadly did die while we were saving the day, so rest in peace, bro. But then the credits just roll as we walk out trying to piece together what just happened. You then sail away, and you see Sophia with Amisha, who is a staple in the Plague Tale games, and I guess this whole game was actually just her retelling the story to Amisha. Very neat developer, very neat. However, then it does end, and here's that final story trophy pop. Alright, so this is the second stage of the Platinum Trophy. Pretty much every trophy left is just a cleanup, and you'll without a doubt have a large majority at this point like I did. The only ones I was actually missing were pretty much just the collectible trophies, which are all relatively simple. You just gotta find them all, and hopefully there is some guides out there by the time this video releases to make that easier. But all in all, there is 5 collectible trophies related to the various types of collectibles, being the blades, the echoes, the charms, the relics, and the skill tree unlocks. After that, there was then just 2 random trophies I was missing from saying hi to a turtle, and then watching the puppet show completely, which I actually did watch like halfway through naturally. And then the rest of the trophies are all just random and various combat trophies, you know, for example, killing 20 enemies from a drop and stuff like that. So overall, very simple platinum, very fun game. You guys are gonna love this one. And once more, you can check out the game through the link in the description. It's a banger. And yeah, thanks for watching, and huge thanks to Focus Entertainment for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you guys soon with more. Peace out, boys.